studying Psalm 107, verses 8 through 9. Let's read that together. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wondrous works to the children of man. For he satisfies the longing soul, and the hungry soul he fills with good things. Oh, this is such great encouragement for us today. At least it was for me today, because we are talking about living lives of thanksgiving, not just giving thanks, but living lives that have a posture, that have a focus and a worldview, that it is not all about us, but it is about Christ and magnifying him and making much of what he has done for us and all the things that he has given us and the great gifts of encouragement and of strength and of grace that he lavishes upon us. We talked yesterday about how rich the Word of God is. And when that is our basis, then man, we can just overflow the things that we read and the things that we study, because it is in his name we are doing everything that we do and everything that we say, right? We talked about that yesterday. It was so good. But today it's going even a step further, and it's saying that we're going to thank God for his steadfast love, for all of his works, because he satisfies the longing soul, and the hungry soul he fills with good things. We recognize that our lives are filled with longing. We were created that way. We were created with a deep longing to be satisfied, to be filled with the full. Jesus tells us the answer to the answer to this longing, the answer to this desire to be satisfied. You know, often we go to every other place to be satisfied. We look to the people in our lives to satisfy the longings for companionship, the longing for being accepted, being invited, to be seen and heard and loved. Many times we look around us to other places to satisfy our desire to be stabilized. So we look to finances, we look to our government, we look to our world, we look to building a life here that we can feel safe, that we can feel stabilized in a very unstable world, right? And so we try to fill it up with making sure we have the right car and the right house, and we have a stockpile of food in case the end of the world comes. And we look to the things of this world to stabilize us when we're fearful. We trust in those things instead of trusting in God. We have deep longings to be seen, to be heard, to be loved, to be accepted. We have a deep longing to have this life mean something, to have a life that is worthwhile. And so many times we try to work harder in our jobs, or we try to make ourselves famous or known around us. We have a desire to be esteemed, to make a difference. And so many times in our own strength, we try to make that happen, and we just end up trying to make a name for ourselves. There are so many longings in our lives and in our hearts, and we were created that way. We were created with a desire to be filled, to be full, to be satisfied. This is not a bad thing. It's not a sinful thing to want to be satisfied, to want to live a richly deep, fulfilling, purposeful, loved life. Those were all given to us by God. But you see, the difference is that those longings are meant to be satisfied and met by God alone. We were created for a relationship with him. And so often we just look with our eyes to this physical world, and we try desperately to fill it with everything around us, trying to satisfy the deep longings of our hearts and of our souls. But you see, through these scriptures, it's telling us that the Lord's steadfast love, his wondrous works, are what satisfies the longing of our hearts and the hunger that is deep within our souls. You see, the greatest, most wonderful work that God ever did was to show his love to us and to bring us to a relationship with himself, to forgive us by sending his son, Jesus Christ. That is the most wondrous work that has ever been done. And so when we look to that and we look to the steadfast, we've talked about this before. Steadfast means this steady. It isn't back and forth like our love is. Our love is so fickle. It's based on emotion. It's based on how much sleep we got or what kind of food we've eaten. Our love is just back and forth, right? It can feel that way today, and I don't really love you tomorrow. You look around at all of us, and we can just be so driven and tossed by what we see and what we feel. But see, God's love is steady. It is constant. It is unconditional. It is unfailing. And it's also fastened to us through Jesus Christ. That means that it is holding on tight and it will never let us go. That alone is the deepest longing of our heart, is to be deeply loved, to be steady, fastened love, to have that in our hearts. And so he did that. He gave us that steadfast, enduring, everlasting, unconditional, never failing love. He gave us that through the wondrous work of Jesus Christ on the cross and his resurrection from the grave. That's the wondrous work he has done for the children of man. That's the greatest. And everything else he's ever done, from creation to the small things in and through our lives, where we just find great joy in him answering prayers, in the coffee that we have with a dear friend, where our hearts are just so encouraged, about seeing our children walking with the Lord, about just walking outside during this beautiful time of year in October and just seeing the beauty and the majesty of what God has created in the seasons and his creation. And we just are filled with just this love and this praise and this worship of God. You see, he does so many wondrous works, but without the first and foremost wondrous work of imparting his steadfast love to us through Jesus Christ, we would not even see or appreciate them. He satisfies the deep longing of our heart. It is to be loved. It is to be accepted. It is to be drawn closer. And we were created for relationship with God, and nothing else can satisfy our souls but him. Nothing. There is no amount of money, no amount of relationships, no amount of accolades or fame. We've seen recently in the death of Matthew Perry, and he was just sharing that all famous people recognize that being famous will never satisfy you. But sometimes he prayed, he's like, God, would you just make me famous? And then he recognized when he became famous, he said, like all famous people recognize, that's not what satisfies our hearts. That's not what satisfies our hearts. And so even other people in all kinds of arenas have seen that when you attain what the world gives, you get to that point of longing that's still there. There is still longing. There is still something in us that is hungry. Our soul is hungry for more than this world can give us. And so Jesus tells us his purpose. He said, I came to this earth so that you would have life, and life to the full, life to the abundance. He said, I came to satisfy your deepest longing, to be full. I came to give you life eternal. I give you something more than this world could ever offer. Isn't that the greatest news? And to be thankful for. And that's why we thank him. That's one of the many reasons why we thank him. Is because his love is never ending. He will never leave us or forsake us. And he has given us all of that love, access to all of his power, his strength, all of his goodness and his glory and his grace and his mercy. We have access to that through the wondrous work of Jesus Christ to the children of man, which is you and I. And in that, he satisfied the longing of our souls and the hunger. And he filled it with good things. Everything that he brings to us is good. We talked about that last week. And so, wow, he fills our hunger, not just with anything, just with the scraps of this world, but he satisfies our soul with good things because he is good and he only gives good gifts. And so when we begin to seek him to satisfy our hearts, when we begin to bring our hungry soul to him, and we allow him to pour the living water into our lives and fill us with the bread of life, he says to us, then you will never thirst again for the things of this world. You will never hunger again for anything else. Your hunger will always be satisfied in me alone. He says, your thirst will always be quenched in me alone, because my water is life and my bread is life. And when you bring your souls to me, I will satisfy them with all of the goodness of the glory of God. Man, what good news is that today? So today, if you're living a life and you feel there's deep longings that haven't been met, perhaps you're lonely for companionship, you miss a loved one, or you miss the fact that you have never had a relationship with someone. Maybe you're living a lonely life. Maybe you're living a dissatisfied life because your job is just running you ragged. Maybe you're just exhausted through parenting, through rebellious seasons of childhood. Maybe your heart is broken over an adult child that is walking away from him. Maybe you're living in a body that is broken and it is difficult, and you just long to be active and you long to be involved in things in your church or your community. I pray today that you'll just take all of that to him, and you will allow your soul to be quenched and your hunger to be satisfied, and that your longings to be filled to the full with his great love for you. And ask him to help you to give thanks because he loves you and he loves me, and to give thanks because he has done wondrous works in our lives. And let's begin to list those out and ask him to open our eyes to the wondrous work of Jesus and how he continues to do wondrous works every day that we're living. So today I pray that for you, and I'll see you tomorrow.